Oh no. We have a quorum. We will now begin with the pledge. Thank you. We will now hear from Ms. Moore.
Good evening. I'd like to introduce you this evening to the winners of the 3rd annual STEMI Awards, which are cleverly named to recognize excellence in science, technology, engineering, and math education. Given by the RTB-based STEM in the Park, the program pairs STEM professionals with students and teachers for hands-on mentoring and job shadowing. 2 students, 1 school, and our district as a whole all received top honors. A panel of STEM professionals named the following winners: Brentwood Magnet Elementary School of Engineering as the STEM School of the Year; Logan Hollander, Reedy Creek Magnet Middle School, STEM Student of the Year, 5th through 8th grades; Pooja Patel, Green Hope High School, STEM Student of the Year, 9th through 12th grades; and Wake County Public School System and Wake Ed Partnership as the STEM Event of the Year. The latter award was for STEMposium, in which 100 WCPSS educators are embedded in STEM businesses and organizations during the summer for professional development and project-based learning and coaching. Congratulations to all. Mount Vernon Middle School's Media Center was transformed last week into a modern learning hub. About 50 volunteers from pharmaceutical company AbbVie assembled new furniture and a Lego wall, hung artwork, and set up maker materials and technology. AbbVie, along with the Heart of America Foundation, also donated a new mobile 3D printer and cart, new Chromebooks, new books, and new decor, as well as maker materials to facilitate creative collaboration. Volunteers even did some campus beautification, painting the dining wall and creating a large mural. It's my hope that these improvements will have a real and positive impact on the achievement of every student at Mount Vernon. Consistent with our call in the Vision 2020 strategic plan to increase community engagement, we are always grateful when community partners step up to support our schools, especially in such a generous and forward-thinking way. My sincere thanks to AbbVie and the Heart of America Foundation. Congratulations to Dr. Jenny Hyde for being named our 2018 School Psychologist of the Year. Dr. Hyde serves the students, families, and staff at Richland Creek and Harris Creek Elementary Schools. Colleagues say she acts not only as the school psychologist, but also as a sounding board for administrators, a shoulder to cry on when teachers are stressed, and a fountain of ideas and helpful strategies for teachers and students. She hosts small groups of special education students that focus on overcoming social emotional difficulties. She also co-facilitates a weekly lunch group that provides academic intervention with 5th grade girls. We know that our schools do not have nearly the number of psychologists and counselors that they need to serve the social and emotional needs of their communities, but I applaud Dr. Hyde and all of her peers who do their level best every day to address every need they see. Thank you.
Thank you. I was going to start with Mount Vernon, but I will just add that both Mr. Williams, the area superintendent, and I both arrived early, and they literally transformed that space in less than 8 hours, which was phenomenal to see the commitment. And I think it's also to note that the employees were from all over the country, and so this was their week of giving, which they are going to expand, and they were very committed. They were washing our walls. So not only did they do all the other work, I do believe when the custodian staff there is going to be very pleased, and so with the children. I mean, literally we're scrubbing walls. And so I think that just speaks to the commitment that we have, not just in North Carolina, but across the country. Public and private corporations are recognizing that it takes all of us to ensure that we are creating the best environment for teaching and learning, not just the building, but what we're doing and what they see in the building. And so, indeed, I reminded them, as Ms. Kushner and I heard Mary Wright Edelman say, beauty matters. And so that's the quote that I left them with, is beauty does matter, and they did a great job there. So it was a great privilege to be there. One quick note is for those of you who do not use social media on a regular basis, much like myself. I feel privileged often to work with the Wake County Food Security Committee, and one of the things that we do is work on increasing our reach to summer feeding, and today began summer feeding in Wake County, so please spread the word. It's one of those committees that I actually can see the fruits of our labor of attending those meetings for those of us who attend lots of meetings. But that one we actually get to see the fruits of our labor. So please note and share on your social media for our board members the locations of where our students can receive meals throughout the summer. The last thing I'll talk about is congratulations to our board members who attended every graduation that we held. Hats off to you all. Wasn't me. I mean, 31, yes. So thank you very much. And for all of us who sent our well wishes, whether we were there physically or those of us who watched online, we got to experience that graduation just like everything else. Each school has its own culture, and we applaud all of our schools for the hard work to ensure that graduation happens. And it's also a time for us to remember that in addition to our graduation, it is the culmination of what we all sit at this table for, and it is also a constant reminder of everyone doesn't meet that finish line. So what's our role and responsibility to ensure that all of our students see graduation is the ultimate finish line in their public school education. And so it's a reminder of the greatness that we see in sharing with those students who don't think they can get there. We heard lots of stories of students who absolutely chose to rewrite and reinvent who they were in their public education with us as a district. And so I'm hoping, I will tell people all the time, if you feel discouraged, your child is discouraged, please take a look at our Phillips graduation. Those speeches, those students were very transparent about their bumps in the road, and I believe that those are things that can give us all hope that when we work together, we absolutely can get our students to the finish line. And so I will encourage people, when you're feeling stressed or deterred, that's one place I would start pointing people to, is the link of that graduation. Those comments from those students and the way that they continue to call the faculty and staff their family was evident of what we can do when we work with our students and families to get them to the finish line. I will also thank the superintendent for allowing me to I think it's my going away as chair gift that I get to actually intro a video today. So I think she was tired of me saying it for my first year as chair, that I didn't get to actually cue up a video. This is one of those about the culmination, and I don't often get teary, but I definitely always get goosebumps. And for those of you who haven't seen this video, this is the one that did give me goosebumps, especially we always talk about this table. We remember those most influential people, teachers or counselors or whomever they were, that inspired us to persevere or continue to go forth. And so thank you for our communications team for the idea, and most importantly for the implementation, and Tim Simmons and his staff for making sure that I was clear in cueing this video so that the control room will start this video. And absolutely, it's another place that we can point to what our faculty and staff can do when we have the resources to ensure that they can reach our students and as many students as possible. And we'll talk more about the budget, but this is a space of why everything we do and every dollar that we're cutting impacts teaching and learning. And without further ado, I'll share with you the most recent video from our district that absolutely gave me chills and reminded me of the great work that's happening in our schools.
Hey, I just wanted to surprise you and let you know how an amazing teacher you were for me. And I'm about to graduate, thank you.
Thank you very much.
How are you?
Good, how are you? What's going on?
I was just stopping by since this year I'm graduating from high school, and they asked me to name a teacher who I think helped me the most throughout my school career, and so I just wanted to stop by and just let you know how much you helped me back in 8th grade. And,
oh my gosh, thank you. That means so much.
I just wanted to come and surprise you and say thank you for everything you did for me in the 4th grade. You were one of the first teachers that told me that I could do anything in school. You told me not to be something that I'm not. And because of that, I have grown into this beautiful woman and this beautiful basketball player.
Oh my God.
You told me, Erica, don't be scared of your height. You said, Erica, you're really good at math. And because of that, math is my favorite subject now.
Oh my gosh. You're welcome.
Hi, Miss Haggerty.
Hey!
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I just wanted to give you this and thank you for everything you've done for me. You've helped me so much throughout my high school. You've always provided a place for me to come and talk, and thank you so much for coming to the good parts too, to the awards banquets and sitting with my parents. So here's
I wouldn't have missed it.
this. And also,
Thank you.
you've helped my family so much, so we gave this for you. My mom appreciates you so much, always calling her and talking to her. Yeah, come here, give me a hug.
Thank you so
You
much.
really meant so much to me, and I really appreciate everything you've done.
Well, you mean a lot to me too, and I'm glad you're doing so well. I'm excited for you next year.
I'm so glad that I could help you on your journey.
Yeah.
Because you have a big, bright future ahead of you. So
Yeah, I just really appreciate that you were able to recognize that and help me kind of get straight in middle school and do great in high school.
I don't want to cry.
I do really feel like they're my kids, and they're really special to me. And you know, I still think about kids I've had like 20 years ago. So they are really special, and that's why I love doing my job. And I won't forget you.
I won't forget you.
Thank you. The last couple things I'll add is when you watch this video again, because I assure you, you probably will, watch our students' faces in that room. They are also in awe to see students in a cap and gown, because we often forget that not every child can see themselves in that cap and gown, and they can't be what they can't see. And so it is up to us to ensure every student can see themselves in that space. And we heard from the folks who were instrumental in those students' lives. I'm not going to forget what one of the students said is, "You saw me, and you told me I could be anything." And those words absolutely can change our students' lives. And so we absolutely will continue to share and express to our teachers and staff that this video is who we are striving to be, so that all of our students have access to this kind of love, support, and quite frankly, acknowledgement for them to be who they are. Dr. Martin.
Thank you. Well, the last couple weeks have been filled with graduations. It was actually a pleasure to get to all of them. Fascinating to watch the different cultures. You know, the film captures it. What graduations show you, the most important part of graduations for me were the stories where the kids would speak. The transformation of lives is what we do. And graduation is a chance to see it. It's fun talking to some principals who had kids come up, you know, to give them a hug, and the principals said, "I almost didn't know who this kid was or knew that they knew me," and yet there was that interaction. Likewise, interacting with teachers, just great event to see that. And I want to give a special thanks to all the schools, because for me, one of the real highlights this year was all the schools did a much better job with our children with special needs. Thank you. to help that child across the stage who has challenges walking or needs a wheelchair or whatnot, that is amazingly transformational for those families. And across the board, I was just really impressed with how the schools handled that. And I got to give a special shout out to Athens Drive, who had 2 deaf members of a choir sing with us. And that was just absolutely phenomenal to have the signing during the choir performance. I mean, they were part of the choir. So to bring the hearing and the non-hearing together in one musical event was absolutely outstanding. So thanks for for everybody who touches the lives, students and faculty and staff, who touches the lives of our students with special needs. So thank you.
Mr. Sutton.
Yeah, just briefly, again, congratulations to all of our graduates from the class of 2018. I don't want to be repetitive. Everybody sort of said the same things, but I do want to just say that I was particularly struck, as always, at the graduation at Phillips and others in particular. But what really struck me this year was the number of graduates who remarked that that they were the first to graduate from their family. And that almost probably seems somewhat foreign, or just, like unnoticed, that in 2018 we still have families graduating, the first person to graduate from their family. And it just goes to show that education is still the equalizer, the great equalizer, and it's so important. And so again, to Madam Chair's point, just underscores why we are here and why we do what we do. So just hats off, not just to the graduates, but to the parents, to the community, to the teachers. So many, too, remarked at all the graduations about this particular teacher here or there who, and many of them lifted up the names of so many teachers. And so thanks to our staff for just helping our graduates along the way, as the video said, to get to this point. It is a marathon, and just happy to see so many cross that line. And just finally, I missed our meeting 2 weeks ago, but I was still working and sort of had the district in mind as I was spending a couple of days up at Harvard at the Early Childhood Learning Institute, working with folks from our state Head Start office to think about innovative ways to expand and more offerings for our early childhood education students. And so it was a great few days of learning. So I want to thank the North Carolina Head Start office and the folks over at Telemon for making that possible, and look forward to putting some of that learning to action. So thank you.
All right, good evening, and also congratulations to all the new graduates, and that was a great video. You started your video queuing up very well, Madam Chair. That was a good one. And also, I've had a couple meetings in the last few months with AHA, Advocates for Health and Action, their WAKE group that is continuing their focus on adverse childhood experiences and building resiliency in our community. The policymaker work group is looking hard at policies that they can put together to present to our community leaders. Just to give my colleagues a heads up, one of those things they're discussing is later start times for high schoolers, as well as social emotional supports within our school system. So I'm really pushing that second one a little harder, but also think we need to look at the later start times as we go forward, because there is community interest in that. And I'll keep you abreast of that work as we go on. Ms. Cash is also working on that work group with me, so there's some good people working hard to build resilience within youth and adults in Wake County.
Ms. Hartenstein.
I've got three quick things. The first is we have a great celebration that will occur on this Thursday, 11 o'clock. It's the groundbreaking ceremony for Parkside Elementary School in Morrisville, and I'm just really excited to be there. 11 o'clock? No, Thursday. I believe it's Thursday.
No, I'm sorry.
Staff, make sure I'm right before I say it wrong.
Well, I have both on my calendar and settled on Wednesday. So. Okay.
That's funny. I had it on Wednesday too and changed it to Thursday. So, okay. I would not have been there tomorrow. That's pretty important. Melissa says I'm right. See, we have just proven the point that we are just regular people with too much to do. The second thing I'd like to talk about is the social emotional needs of our students. We have discussed that at great length here at the board table and how important it is. And when you have a school that makes that a priority and puts in place programs that are going to strengthen students' ability to interact with other kids and make good decisions. I was visiting York Elementary, and I just so happened to be in the office when this Mr. Scott, who is the Safety Patrol sponsor, came rushing into the office with this letter from a young lady. Her name is Devin Whitlock, and this is what she had to say as she applied to be a Safety Patrol at York. I think I would be a good fit for Safety Patrol because I am responsible. Like any other club or activity, I do my best. Another reason why I would be good for Safety Patrol is I love kids. I love to teach kids the right thing to do. I can teach them that other people matter mindset. I love seeing kids smile and excited to go to school. Also, I would be a good for Safety Patrol because I am kind. I can teach them good habits while treating them kindly. I am very interested in Safety Patrol. Well, I'm very interested in Devin Whitlock to become a teacher in Wake County Public Schools when she graduates from college. What a great mindset and what a great example of what taking care of the social emotional needs of our children. And finally, I'd like to give a shout out to our Wake County Commissioners. Yesterday, they passed a proclamation in recognition of the month of June being Pride Month. In Wake County, we work hard to make sure that we are treating all of our students equitably, including our LGBTQ students. And for them to pass that resolution was the first time. And the leadership, I am so thankful for Jessica Holmes and Greg Ford for taking the leadership in this and declaring this this proclamation to be Pride Month in June. Thank you.
Ms. Mahaffey?
I echo all the graduation sentiments. I just want to lift up what one of our principals shared of graduation is not just one celebration, but a multitude of celebrations. And we got to see those celebrations this past 31 of them. And each one had their unique spin. Each one was its own. And just amazing to see that get pulled off, and to see those kids walk across that stage is like nothing else.
I just the same way echo, but I was really glad you showed that film. I'd seen it briefly, but that shows you what the impact that kids get from their teachers. And I think in the future I'll try to share more stories about how my kids have been impacted by a lot of the people that are facing some of the budget cuts, maybe even in our budget. So I want to share those as we go forward, because I do want to try to figure out better ways to take care of that. But also, graduation was wonderful, of course, and our administrative staff did a great job of running that all smoothly. I don't know how they do that and keep us all going back and forth, and kids coming in and out. I really appreciate that. And I like the smaller graduations because I love to hear where kids are going to college and things. That's fun. But it's been a great week.
I, too, would like to say congratulations to all the graduates. I missed 4 of them this year, which is off of my pattern.
Oh, my God.
But I felt good at the 27. I like hearing what the young people say, and share some of those with you. We are family. If not me, then who? Trust the process. You are the maker of your own direction. Where we all are college ready. You mean the world to me. Pursue your passion, and a class like no other. That was actually from the first graduating class from Apex Friendship High School. Amazing celebrations, close to 11,000 young people who are moving forward. One other observation is there's recognition in the programs, and typically a student has a cord around their neck indicating that they are a CTE concentrator. They have taken 4 courses, 3 basic and an advanced course in a particular stream or strand of career technical education, CTE. The graduation rate for CTE concentrators is 100% in most cases. And I think there's something there for us to think about. And also, this graduation season, we had the first ceremony for career technical young people in the construction trades doing early signing with local contractors. So a couple of those are moving straight into the trades out of school. A couple of the other ones who did early signings, one's going to NC State, one's going to LSU to get a 4-year degree, but they've early signed with these construction companies. So our building community keeps knocking on the door saying, help us, we need more skilled people to come into the construction trades. We're doing what we can, and as young people express interest in doing something with their hands, looking for a trade, we have programs to support them in those interests. So glad to celebrate those young people in executing and moving forward with their choice of their future as they graduate from our high schools.
Thank you. We'll now move to the approval of our meeting agenda. I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move approval of our meeting agenda as listed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please note by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Our first informational item this evening is our Board Advisory Chairs report. We have 3 board chairs presenting today. However, the other reports can be found in your items on Assembly. And we will go in the order in which I received them. So first we'll have District 1, Larissa Moore. District 9, Julie Roseland. District 2, Ashley Riffett. You're also seated that way, too.
How did we do that? We're good. Obviously, this is set for people that are normal height, which is the story of my life. Can everybody hear me, or should I move them down?
We're power pack size.
Okay, perfect. First, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Larissa Moore, and I represent District 1. I was in the audience as you're all talking about graduation for my second one that just graduated this year. I would like to take a minute I know how busy your schedules are, and I know this spring it has had a lot more on your plates than normal with getting a new superintendent. So I'd like to take the time to say thank you as a parent for the time you invested in coming to all the different ceremonies that you could and being a participant in that. I greatly appreciate that as a parent. It's a whirlwind, but it's nice to see the representation and everything that you guys are doing, so thank you. District 1 this year spent some time with our topics specifically for our council meetings, looking at what the impact has been to our district with our ever-changing system that we have, with our growth, with all of the different options we have for students and parents, and what impact is directly affecting our District 1, which we've had a lot this year between schools opening outside of our district and the impact, changes with possible changes about calendar options, and moving and growth and rebuilding of some of our schools. So we did spend multiple meetings on those focus. We did discuss about our East Wake School rebuild plan. about direct impact of what was happening, but we also had a discussion on going forward as our growth continues of what to do with our buildings when it's time to change, modify, or rebuild, and how the decision process is done going through that. And we took feedback from our group. We also spent time going back and looking at some of the system for student appeals because of our growth and changes and where people would like to be at school versus where they're assigned to school. We spent time and asked our members for the input on that. We actually spent one of our sessions saying, if you were the board and discussed 5 or 6 or 7 topics and said, we're putting you in the hot seat, what would you do and why? And we did a survey where they could write down their information, and we took that up, and Mr. Agee used that for some of his engagement on some of the topics that were happening. The other thing is because of a lot of our change that's happening in our school, we spent one focused meeting about multiple things that were happening. We went back and looked at how new schools are cited and planned. We looked at student assignment. We looked at how schools generate allotments. And we talked about how communication is given. And we had breakout sessions after that, specifically focused on District 1, where all of our principals and our parents were able to give feedback, and which was very important. To wrap up our busy year, we also addressed safety, what the board was looking at, options, and we got feedback from our parents about how they felt and any options they might possibly have as far as it goes for having our families and our children and our parents feel safe of what's happening in the school system. With that, thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chairperson, Superintendent Moore, and members of the board, thank you very much for having us here tonight. I'm Julie Roseland, and with Kurt Stangler, I'm representing District 9 Board Advisory Council. Under Bill Fletcher's leadership, we had 5 meetings this year. 2 of those meetings had board-assigned topics. I'm going to focus on the 3 meetings that did not have board-assigned topics. And first, I'd like to talk to you about our meeting on September the 18th. We actually had 2 roundtable discussions that evening. The first roundtable discussion focused on the start of the new school year. Bill likes to lead with that generally for our new school years to get feedback primarily from the principals about how the school year start is going. At that time, we talked about transportation issues, although there wasn't quite enough data on 2 major issues: the new student tagging or IDs on buses, as well as the increased amount of cameras on the buses. We did get some significant positive responses from year-round schools that had already started using the new app, Here Comes the Bus. And also, principals reported a very positive response concerning the addition of 7 teacher workdays prior to the start of the traditional calendar school year. During our second roundtable discussion, we talked primarily about pending legislation on class size. Of course, that was a big topic back then. We discussed some practical examples, and Bill led with a typical elementary school that is built for 764 students, but under the proposed legislation would only be able to serve 688, therefore losing 92 seats, again, at a typical elementary school. We talked about potential action steps for parents and other public school advocates, including suggestions for positive interactions with our legislatures. Then on November the 6th, we hosted Ms. Sherry Miller, the Director of K-12 Literacy for Wake County Public Schools, and she walked us through an overview of the new English Language Arts curriculum that was introduced for grades 3 and 6. That was quite a lively discussion, frankly a lot of fun. She started with a review of the rather in-depth process for selecting the new curriculum and the vendor EL Education, and then we dove into the new curriculum itself, a discussion about the learning path, including reading, writing, thinking, and talking, as well as formative assessments. emphasis was placed on the fact that with this new curriculum, you can use the same book and reach children in the classroom with lots of varying skill levels. The group talked about some issues with the initial rollout of the program, particularly as it involved training for teachers and some potential for fixes for that for subsequent rollouts. And then finally, on March 19th, we held a discussion on school security and reviewed the Wake County Public Schools Student Discipline Report. We started with a historical overview of the evolution of school safety issues in Wake County, beginning with the research done back in 1995 by then Superintendent Dr. Surratt. And then we moved into discussions on the complexity of the issue, the fact that we've got 13 local organizations with some level of ownership, 12 different municipalities with their own police departments, and then of course our county-wide sheriff's office. We went back to 2003 and looked at those advancements, including the black boxes in school administration offices and the red bags that each class in Wake County now carries. And then the group was briefed on regular training activities, including annual reviews by internal inspectors and periodic active shooter exercises. Finally, we took a look at the task force findings from 2013. We got a lot of feedback in that meeting from parents, as you can imagine, and from principals, and we talked about the importance of relationships with students and teachers having the time to develop those relationships. We reviewed some potential cost issues related to possible facility improvements to increase security. And then finally, we ended the meeting with a student discipline report that had just come out. And we had a very candid, good conversation about those statistics in light of sex and race. So in conclusion, District 9 would like to express our appreciation for the many Wake County staff members that support our group and the knowledgeable speakers who spend their evenings with us to talk about these important issues that not only affect District 9, but the entire school system as a whole. Personally, I am continually impressed with the level of professionalism at the staff, and I thank you very much, each and every one, for your guidance. Thank you. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Superintendent Moore, and School Board, my name is Ashley Reffett, and I represent District 2 under the leadership of Ms. Johnson-Hostler. This year we had 2 board meetings that were selected from you all on student enrollment and student assignment. Those were very lively meetings in our district from some very vocal parents. And they were very good and did a good job of explaining what was going on and what was best for our district. We also had 2 specific topics that we discussed at our meeting on December 7th. We discussed the curriculum, the new ELA curriculum. Brian Kingsley, the Assistant Superintendent for Academics, and Cheryl Miller, the Director of Literacy, led those meetings. Brian Kingsley presented the new ELA program that was rolled out to grades 3 and 6 this year. There was also significant input from students and teachers for this curriculum, and the teachers had tested materials and resources. The community was involved, and lots of feedback was given. Cheryl Miller also explained that this program will be taught in grades 3 through 8, beginning in this next school year. The ELA education program is an open education program, is highly rated with 7.5 million downloads available for teachers, and its view of student achievement is mastery of student knowledge and skills, high quality of student work, and character. This program asks the question, are we developing students that are flexible in their learning? Parents were able to ask questions at the end of this presentation. We were also blessed at this meeting to have the students at Barwell Elementary and their student ambassadors eat dinner with us, and they touched our hearts with this, a really great presentation from that school. We were very excited for that. And then in our meeting on February 15th, we discussed technology and overview for parents and the parent portal. We heard from Kendra Allen, the coordinating teacher for secondary library media services, and Allison Reed, the coordinating teacher for instructional technology. They presented information on digital resources for students. Some of the resources that we highlighted were Canvas Learning Management System, Google Classroom, NCWise OWL, Destiny, and eWise. The information was very useful and helped parents better understand the integration of classrooms and how we support learning goals for students. Sandy Honeycutt and Becky Lyken from Student Information Services provided information on PowerSchool, which is used to track student information and grades. They explained how parents can request access to the system and explained that the web portal also includes student assignment and transportation information. Both meetings were very helpful to our parents in District 2. And on behalf of District 2, we thank you all for your service and your dedication to the students and to our schools in Wake County.
Thank you all for attending and for sharing the BAC updates. We all have our BACs and not always in tune to what our colleagues are doing. So thank you for sharing. And also thank you for a very lively chairs meeting that you all entertained me with. So I greatly appreciate that, which happened to be on the same day we swore in the superintendent. So we had de facto food left. But thank you all for your time, energy, and the support that you provided me and what I will continue to share with our staff and board moving forward for our BAC meetings next year. Thank you. We will now move to academic advancement. Ms. Karen Hamilton, I don't. I was like, I can't see behind the blue wall column. Thank you. To provide a discussion and awareness on special education contracts, which we often see in consent, but this is a great opportunity to further explore the work that we're doing in Spec Ed. Thank you, Ms. Hamilton.
It is. Board Chair, Superintendent Moore, members of the board, it's an honor to be here tonight and to talk a little bit about special education contracts. As you'll see on the agenda, we have a number of contracts that support special education services. As you know, we must serve over 20,000 students with disabilities with special education services and related services. Some of those are complicated services that serve very complex children who face challenges every day in order to get to school, attend school, be in school, and access their educational opportunities. The contracts that you're going to see tonight include direct services for students with significant behavioral disabilities who have been recommended for long-term suspension and would otherwise be excluded from school without these services. You're going to see 8 contracts that are related to the delivery of preschool services. You're going to see 6 contracts that are related to nursing services for students who could not otherwise attend school without one-to-one nursing. You're going to see 2 contracts that are directly related to how we function and provide services for students as related to their IPs by the development of their IP. And that also includes MTSS services and a number of other suites. And while it's not included in my department, you're also going to see contracts for transportation directly related to students with disabilities. It remains and continues to be my honor to serve special education students as we have always done in the district, and as a reminder that these students also exist in families that are in our county. This information is just designed to be a high-level overview for you. The contracts are included in the agenda. I'm happy to entertain any questions or leave continuing to be honored to serve.
Any questions or comments from board members regarding the contract, Ms. Kushner?
I don't have a question as much as a comment that all of these really show that how we're trying to leverage community resources and partner with community agencies. I've been to Frankie Lemon recently and Tammy Lynn Center, and these groups are doing phenomenal work, and also, again, leveraging resources from our community that help serve our kids even greater. So I appreciate all this work, and
they do a great job.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you very much for drawing our attention to
thank
this,
you,
Ms. Hamilton. We will now move to public comment. Citizens who sign up to address the board during public comment will be called on in priority order, first for items on the agenda and then for items not on the agenda. Each individual speaker will be allowed 3 minutes for remarks. Specific personnel or student matters are not appropriate for this public comment setting, but may be addressed through applicable WCPSS personnel, the grievance policy, or other applicable policies. Kathy Murrell.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here. My name is Kathy Murrell, and I'm a mom from the Kitts Creek neighborhood. Kitts Creek is a community I know this board has heard from quite a bit. I'm here today to specifically comment on the BAC report outs that just happened. District 7 wasn't spoken of here, but Mr. Carroza did reflect our priorities in the work session that just happened before this meeting. I was pleased to hear that our position was very accurately represented in that our greatest concern for student assignment designation for Kitts Creek is proximity. Proximity is our priority irregardless of calendar option preference. It is the priority irregardless of elementary, middle school calendar alignment. I understand this request will impact school utilization in Western Wake County, and this is of great concern to the board, and rightfully so. There are very real challenges that come with this request. I respectfully ask that the board please remember that exporting our Kitts Creek students 15 miles to East Cary for operational efficiencies is just not acceptable to us, as we are living with the detrimental impact it has to our students' education. So we ask that you please provide a better way that includes proximate schools for Kitts Creek in the initial draft that is to be released in August. Lastly, I just wanted to comment on the timeline for the student assignment draft process. It is very efficient, and I do believe it does provide adequate feedback opportunity for all the affected families. And it provides families with certainty in a very timely manner, because conclusion is by the end of this year. So that is very much appreciated for families like us, which are trying to plan out for the years ahead. So in closing, thank you for working with us. We look forward to continue to working with the board and the student assignment staff as we continue walking through this process. Thank you.
Chrissy Dunn.
Hi, I'm Chrissy Dunn from the North Carolina chapter of the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. So for those of you that aren't familiar, we are the world's largest voluntary health organization dedicated to funding research, finding cures, and ensuring access to treatments for blood cancer patients. And I specifically want to talk to you guys today about our Student Series program. That is a science-based philanthropy program for schools across the state. And we connect participating schools with local blood cancer patients. We provide some tangible life skills to participants, and we allow students to see the impact that they're making in the lives of others. So in particular, we are really grateful for the support of the schools that are in this district, who've been really generous participants of our program for the last 15 years. And this past school year alone, we had 25 Wake County schools that raised nearly $58,000. And since 2003, Wake schools have raised nearly $1 million. So thanks to schools in this district, there are more cancer patients that are surviving every day. So in addition, we do appreciate the opportunity to invest back into the school community by providing Amazon gift cards to our partners so they can purchase school supplies and other needs they may have. Schools that participate in a Student Series program also receive a comprehensive Common Core aligned K-8 STEM curriculum that they can incorporate into their fundraising campaign or beyond. And we provide over 90 materials such as a teacher's guide, send home letters to parents, in-class presentations, grade-specific activities, nonfiction reading passages, and more. So with 28 schools that are in your district that we know are participating in the STEM Collaborative Network and hearing about the shout-outs you are giving to some of those STEM schools, we know that you'll appreciate that our STEM curriculum allows your students to experience the commitment, the creativity, and the curiosity that is at the heart of science. And you guys are really helping us us to create the scientists of tomorrow. So I know that together we can outsmart cancer. So thanks for allowing us to work with your schools to help us serve more patients and to save more lives. There are currently 18 schools that are in your district right now that are currently signed up to participate for next year. But I do welcome the opportunity to talk to any of you in more detail about expanding our partnership further. So I'll be in touch soon to set up a meeting. But thank you, guys.
Stephanie Reed.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Reed, and I've lived in the Kitts Creek community of Morrisville for 12 years. And I'm here to support approximately close elementary school, middle school, and high school to Kitts Creek, which means I also support more schools for Morrisville. My daughter is starting high school next year at Enloe, and she's been in the magnet school system since kindergarten. The reason Morrisville is one of the few towns without a middle school and a high school is because for the last 10 years, we've had two very weak district school board representatives, Deborah Prickett and Zora Felton, who completely shut out Morrisville from any communication with Wake County Public Schools. Several town of Morrisville staff and town council members have tried numerous times to create a communication channel with Wake County Public Schools, but was never reciprocated. It is my belief that Wake County lives in a bubble, shutting out ideas from the outside. Their solution is to do what they know best, comfortable, and politically safe, which is to add more magnet programs, create inflexible policies like the policy of new schools opening on traditional calendars, or creating an inflexible and restrictive policy of finding land, which in my opinion are not smart policies with a school system that is constantly growing and adding thousands and thousands of students each year. At least now with Kathy Hardenstein as our district representative, Morrisville is finally being heard and there is hope. We are very thankful to have her. Unfortunately, it's a bit late because there's not much land left given the current land policy. Any chance to buy land in Morrisville is quickly rejected because of Wake County Public Schools' inflexible policies. Wake County Public Schools could have bought the Phillips Farm land but rejected it because it had a stream flow through it. They won't buy the Sam's Club building because it overlaps into Durham County. Even Wake County Public Schools reluctantly bought land in RTP for a third Morrisville elementary school called Parkside, but rejected the idea of making the school a kindergarten to 8th grade academy. It's clear Wake County Public Schools is afraid to take risks and adapt and change. They want to do what's easiest and safe. With a new superintendent and the possibility of Apple and Amazon coming to Raleigh, it's time for Wake County schools to make radical changes. It's time to be proactive and prepare for growth and create completely new policies and strategies. Whether Wake County Public School changes or not, Morrisville will progress forward and do what they can to provide more schools to its citizens under the law. At the last Morrisville Town Council meeting, the Town Council has asked the town manager and its staff to set up a framework for a Morrisville Education Advisory Committee. The committee will be made up of Morrisville citizens from all areas of the town. It is my hope that if this committee reaches out to Wake County Public Schools, that the school system will respond and collaborate. I don't like watching my friends leave Wake County Public Schools to a charter school, private school, or homeschool. We all want to make Wake County Public School the best public school system in the country.
Geraldine Alshami.
Good evening. Hope everybody's doing well. You know, every time I come here, I almost feel like the school system is such a perfect place until I step back outside the door and have to be faced with all the challenges that we face in our community trying to educate poor Black and minority children. So, I don't know, I think it was you that said something about children with disabilities. I first want to say thank you because I too had a grandson that walked across the Roseville stage who is severely autistic. So I'm certainly appreciative to that. And I don't, it really makes me kind of feel bad to have to come here and say this to you. But I've been addressing Wake County for 10 years, and before Wake County, 30-some years across the country. About the same thing, disparate treatment of poor Black and minority children. After about 30 years of this, you really become frustrated and whatever, and I'm not pointing fingers, but I am going to say this. I think that we've really ignored some elephants that are in the room, sometimes because we don't want to think that this is happening in our school systems, but I'm here to tell you that it is. And what's more important, I want to talk about solutions. I'm not even going to go into that. I want to talk about solutions. One of the problems with I was talking with the person from due process, and he talked about the many suspensions of kids in our school, particularly kids who have special needs, particularly black children, and particularly children who are now in like elementary school. So I've seen it digress from high school, middle school, and now down to elementary school. I would ask the board that our solutions have to be both school-wide and community-wide. One of the things that I do see, I'm not saying that you don't work with community, but it's like gardening. There's a top layer that folks like to play around with, but folks don't like to deal with the bottom layer. I deal with the bottom layer at all times. We are desperately in need of a community-wide, a community-based restorative justice program. Our babies do not have anywhere to go when they go to, particularly our kids who, the other thing is that, I'm sorry, the other thing is that we, and I'll call, actually what I'm going to do, if it's okay with y'all, I'm going to set up a meeting with each one of you to really talk about this in depth, because it is a very serious matter, and until we really start to really address these things at a more of a grassroots level, we're going to continue with this vicious cycle. And I, for one, I don't have time for it. I ain't got a whole lot more time, but I want to enjoy that I do have. Thank you. And I'll reach out to each one of you.
Deepa Bharati. Thank you.
Hello, board members. You probably recognize the blue T-shirts, and you guessed it right. I also live in the Kids Creek community. I'm Deepa Bharati. First of all, I want to thank you all for the work you do, and it's not easy keeping up with the educational needs of an exploding county. Thank you all for all the good work that you do. I'm here to emphasize my community and neighborhood's need for proximate schools. Our middle school, East Cary, is the 6th closest school currently, and with Alston Ridge Middle slated to open, we'd like to change that, not to go to the 7th closest school, but the closest school, or the next closest school, as per the Wake County Pillars advertisement. Our neighborhood has waited too long for this to happen. I was at the back meeting, and Mr. Glenn Carusa was wonderful in answering all our questions, and he spoke to us about how the assignment happens, the drafts and everything, and how the calendar for a school is assigned or chosen. I really feel like Wake County Public School System has shot themselves in the foot on that one when it comes to the calendars, and considering that we have 2 different calendars. And I can see why more parents want traditional calendars. Year-round calendars are new to a lot of parents, and families have to deal with children in multiple calendars. And not to mention, now calendar change or request to traditional options are rejected outright. So assigning a year-round option means you're pretty much stuck with it. That said, neighborhoods like us should not have to bear the burden of faraway schools just because some families want to have long summer vacations. With decisions on Parkside and Alston Ridge Middle as they're being made, we just want to say we want closer schools irrespective of what calendar it is. Proximity over calendar and education over vacation is what we need. That said, we need to keep in mind that growth that's happening in the area and do due diligence when a new school is assigned a calendar. Thank you.
We will now move forward with, I'll entertain a motion for our consent items.
Motion to approve the consent.
All in favor, please note by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Thank you. First, we have, we'll continue our conversation a bit with Mr. David Nieder regarding finance and moving forward with an interim budget resolution. And I will remind board members that held your questions that we will allow those to be asked and answered here. So hopefully you made your notes. Thank you, Mr. Nieder.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Superintendent Moore. At your work session 2 weeks ago, we provided you an overview of the final state budget for the coming year, as well as the final Wake County budget for the coming year, and implications for the Board of Education's proposed budget for 2018-19. We reviewed some additional information with you this afternoon at your work session, as well as a series of options for bridging the funding gap of $25.5 million. We ran out of time. I know you've got questions, but to finish up what the précis is, state statute does require the board to adopt a budget prior to the beginning of the next fiscal year. So tonight we'll be asking the board consideration of adopting an interim budget. This is allowed under North Carolina General Statute 115C-434, and the interim budget resolution allows the district to continue to operate for the purpose of paying salaries and the usual expenses of the school system for the period beginning July 1 through that point that the board does adopt the final budget resolution.
Motion to approve an interim budget as stated by the finance officer.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Now we'll entertain questions. Ms. Kushner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Nieder, I wanted to see if in passing our interim budget today, if we can add an amendment or some rider that accepts the $2 million that has been identified by the county to be specifically spent on social and emotional learning. Is there a way that we can go ahead and do that tonight so that we can fast track that money, planning for that spending in the coming year?
The language in the county's ordinance describes that the Board of Education, following an action taken by the Board of Education, will appropriate the $2 million as a recurring expense. And again, appropriation of the reserve is contingent upon the Board of Education taking formal action to utilize that funding to increase the funding the school district provides for support of social and emotional learning. I would think I'll turn to board's counsel that with an appropriate amendment directing staff to use that portion of funding or that amount of funding for the 2018-19 school year for that specific purpose, that would be allowed or would constitute an action that could then be forwarded to the Board of Commissioners to release that reserve.
We have a business case of $1.1 million that we talked about at work session. Would that satisfy, Mr. Blumberg, would that satisfy as that ordinance was written? It's a little complicated.
So you're seeking to amend the motion to approve the interim budget to add a provision that the district will move forward with, the county provides it as they said they would, the $2 million in additional funding for the social and emotional.
Correct.
Okay. So make that motion then.
All right. I would love to make that motion. I would make a motion to amend Dr. Martin's motion to have the expand our interim budget to reflect the $2 million on social and emotional learning, as we have previously stated in business cases that already exist in the system.
Second.
Dr.
So I'm fully in support of the idea. My question, though, is my read of the resolution from the county is that they need a plan in place before they're going to appropriate the dollars. I agree we've got the 1.1 million identified, but the other 0.9, we don't have a formal plan identified. So I'm just worried that they're going to come back and say, nope, until you guys have a plan, we're not going to release those funds.
Well, I would say we have a plan for 6.9 I'm going to ask our superintendent to answer that then.
We can provide a plan for the 1.1 that we've identified this evening, and we can provide what we will do with the other 900,000 or so.
I read it, our business cases totaled over $6 million. We have plans and I'm sure details on how we would spend that 6.1. So I think that's in place. I feel confident in place.
Mr. Fletcher.
I think in listening to Mr. Reeder's reading of the ordinance, the expectation that this is additional, this is not to supplant existing funding for these services, but rather would be additional funding for these services to our schools and students. I think that's the accurate reading, and I'm sure this board would support that.
And if I could add that nothing in our recommended options for adjustments would define this additional funding in its use to be supplanting current levels of funding.
Do you have a follow-up comment or question? Sorry. We have a motion and a second on the table.
And that's just to
the amendment. Mr. Sun, did you?
Yeah. I guess my concern is as I read it, I wonder, is it simply the formal action that is needed or the submission of a plan? And I guess my concern with submission of a plan is that gets to, in my view, the county either one essentially giving us a grant or holding back funds and looking at departmental plans for the district. So to me, that's a little bit of an overreach, I think, in my view, to say, well, we need to see a plan submitted by we're not a department of the county, and so this gets into, I think, line itemizing.
I do believe Mr. Commissioner West said that well.
Yeah, our budget. So that this action somewhat concerns me. I do get the fact that we have a budget gap to close, but I don't want to get on this slippery slope that this is something that we would continue to do, is submitting of a plan. So I would be more comfortable. I will support this, but I would feel more comfortable in just the formal action that we're just requesting that, and I think what we have submitted before is sufficient in my view, but I'm just
Agreed.
Mr.
Blumberg?
So I do want to read, because
agreed.
This one sort of came at me fast. I do want to read what the 115C434 says about an interim budget. It does say the board shall make an interim appropriation for the purpose of paying salaries and the usual ordinary expenses of the local board administrative unit for the interval between the beginning of the fiscal year and the adoption of the budget resolution. So
are you withdrawing your allowal of this amendment?
I did, yes.
I thought I'd ask the attorney a direct question.
Yeah, I think that while there's an argument that you could still make the request at this point,
I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, I'm going to say that the spirit of this and the language would suggest that you're pretty much tied to just getting through between now and the time that you approve your official budget. So, yes, I would say that we should probably move forward without the amendment.
Given that the council has
spoken,
withdrawn his support of my ability to make this amendment, I will withdraw my amendment for now and focus on the interim budget.
It will be our first amendment when we pass a budget.
Thank you.
Did you say you object? Oh, I thought he said he objects. I was like, fascinating.
No, we got, listening to counsel is always a good idea. But I wanted to say I made the amendment because I want us to make sure that we are quick to
absolutely
hire these, to use this funding, to expand social and emotional learning, and so my one concern with an interim is that we are we are delaying doing our budget, but I know we're coming back on July 10th, so hopefully that will be enough time for perhaps the start of the traditional schools to be able to have a budget in place. Thank you.
We will all point to this graduation video as to why we need that. The impact is evident, and I think that's our case study right there. Like that's where we point to our plan. So we'll get back to task, Mr. Blumberg, and continue the questions before we actually vote on the interim.
The interim budget without the amendments still on the floor, and you'll talk. Got it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm looking for my folks who had questions inside the work session that you can begin asking those now.
I have some grave concerns based on a comment I made 2 weeks ago about the shock to our families over what we're going to cut and what we're going to cut in services to children. I would like some more detail because I'm still confused on the 100 positions that are cooperating teachers. These are all out of central services. Is that correct?
They're all funded out of central services. Some are assigned to specific schools, and some are itinerant and serve multiple schools, if not the whole district.
And I'd like to know more about who those, not the people themselves, but the position. Does this mean that at the school level where a teacher is really struggling with a student in kindergarten because the behaviors are such that they're considering special education, and so they would call the district office and ask the cooperating teacher to come out and help be able to work with that teacher and with the child to try to figure out a plan? Is that one of the types of positions we're talking about eliminating? Could be. Would it be any of our MTSS coaches?
So let me just say a couple of items that we're looking at. Without going into too much detail, we are also looking at vacant positions and the extent to whether or not we can absorb some of these through vacant positions and redistributing workload, which that would happen. We are also looking at because these are Fund 1 and 2 positions that we are looking at, state and local funds. We do have vacancies in other funding sources that could complete some of similar duties and responsibilities, so you shift the funding source. So whether or not it's actually 100 staff member depends.
I'm going to be very concerned about any service cuts that affect students.
As are we.
And I'm not implying that you're not at all. We don't have enough as it is. And even when you start looking at positions that are vacant, there are schools that are doing without because the position's vacant right now and they've waited for some time and with the hope, eventually it's going to lift. Well, if it doesn't lift, then and when you put more responsibilities, you cannot respond as quickly because you may have a caseload of 25 cases and you've got one person trying to manage all of those. Won't be as effective. Ms. Cashew, I think you might be asking, you asked earlier the question about our enhancement teachers and the allotment for that enhancement. Now I'm going to speak from personal experience, and I can't believe that I'm having to say this because I remember calling my area superintendent and I remember talking to deputy superintendent about the needs of small schools and the fact that if we were really going to be able to compete with larger schools, that we needed our enhancement teachers funded at full-time, not at 80%. And so in our small schools, and we have a lot of small schools, we got enhancement teachers funded at 100%. And that allowed the small schools to really do some great things with kids. We are in a situation now in which this is being on the board is not so much fun. where I would like us to look at that formula for enhancement teachers. I just did some math. It would not mean eliminating enhancement teachers. Do not support that. But that small schools may only be able to have their enhancement teachers 80%, or if, and these are rough numbers, if we went to what the state allots us, you'd be looking at going from 100%, that means they're there 5 days a week, to 60%. They'd only be there 3 days a week. So what does that mean, board members? It means that the kids are still going to get art, music, PE, but 2 days a week there will be no specials. Therefore, there's no planning for teachers on those days. And to be able to get the work done, they've got to be able to plan for their lessons and what they're going to do with their individual children. So, though I don't think it's a great solution, we might need to be creative there and look at how many millions could we save if we were to change the allotment formula. And I am keenly aware of the fact that that also means, would we actually, if we have a bunch of vacancies, would we eliminate some positions? I don't want to go to pink slips. And the final question or comment that I have is, if we end up having to eliminate some positions by moving them to other positions in our cooperating teachers, just because they have a license, a certification in administration does not mean that is what their passion is and where they want to be in a school. It's pretty critical to the success of a school that our principals have a choice in who they choose to be their assistant principal or principals versus having someone who has a passion for behavior intervention but who happens to have the certification can now be an assistant principal. So I have some concerns about that and would not like to see that happen.
I see Ms. Moore taking notes. Were there any other questions? Mr. Sutton.
Yeah. Mr. Nieder, you mentioned in your presentation at the work session your concern regarding non-certified staff.
Yes,
conversation. Sir. I think it was on slide 21. And I had a couple of questions. I know you probably don't have this information at your fingertips right now, but in considering the budget shortfall, I too am concerned about these employees, and these are the employees who would not, based on the new state budget, would not get the raise that is bringing all minimum state employees, the salary of minimum employees, up to $31,000. So my question is, how many employees are in the district that would, well, I guess they don't qualify because they weren't included. How many employees are in our system would it take for us to raise their salaries up to the $31,000? And then what, if we approved a plan to bring our employees up to that minimum standard, if we did that all in one fell swoop, if we could approach that over a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year period, what that would cost. It's kind of a ballpark figure, because my concern, as you alluded to on this slide, if we leave ourselves very vulnerable if we don't take some action, I believe, to bring those employees to that $31,200 level. I think we might possibly see maybe not a mass exodus of employees, but if we start losing or bleeding employees to the state or other state agencies that do similar work and at a higher salary, then we would see more than just a problem of recruiting and retaining bus drivers, but probably bus drivers as well as some other key and essential employees. So I think we've seen the county make a similar move. Now the state has made a similar move. I think we too at least have to, it would be wise for us to consider making also a similar move. Now, how we do that in the face of an already similar shortfall, but I think that might be something that ought to be considered in this piece if we can, and the longer we delay it, I think the more vulnerable we are. So,
okay. To respond to some of your questions, Mr. Sutton, we can derive estimates of what it would cost to bring staff that are below that $15 an hour living wage threshold up to it. It is a significant number of staff. I believe a couple years ago, we looked at it sort of from a back of the envelope model, and I want to say it was half of our staff, a third to a half. One additional exacerbating factor that even with what the state has done for state employees, they've done a good thing, but they've then created another challenge with it, because they have only provided funding to bring those that are under that threshold up to that threshold. And for any agency that has got a step system, they have created compression then from step 0 up to that $15 an hour threshold. And so under that scenario, short of a legislated increase, an employee would not see any change in their hourly rate until that point of compression is over. But we can certainly determine how many employees we're talking about, what that funding would look like. I would like to point out that my concern with regard to the non-certified staff is certainly with those that are under that threshold, but really with all non-certified staff, because while those over the threshold aren't facing the challenge of not even making what is considered to be a living wage, they have effectively been going backwards as well. If you look at what their increases have been over the last 10 years compared to inflation, they have not kept pace. So it really is, it's not just that group, it's all non-certified staff.
So I'm just thinking, when we changed our bus driver salary schedule, it used to be 13 years to get to $15 an hour. Now under the new salary schedule, that would be 7 years with no change if we went to that. So I'm just trying to do some math in my head.
Mr. Fletcher.
A companion point there is that even our bus drivers would not be 12-month employees. So getting to $15 an hour as a 10-month employee is still not getting to the 31.2 that the state is promising. Somewhere in our budget document, I've been looking for it, there's a number that most businesses wouldn't think about including in their budget, and that is spending the money that we expect to have available because we've got open positions. And I think that number is somewhere around 5,000 months of employment. And maybe Mr. Winters could help us out, but that is we're already we're already redeploying that resource somewhere else in our budget.
Yes, sir. We have, I believe the figure is in the $19 million range.
Okay.
Where it's built into our base budget an assumption that we will have vacancies throughout the year and that those salaries will lapse and we can use them for other purposes. That is already built into the balancing of our overall budget.
So in the presentation, we were looking at this is not a good, it's not a productive conversation, but we have to have it. I thought there was some expectation that there were more opportunities to gain some revenue, if you will, from additional unfilled positions. I mean, what happens to the 100 positions that we move out of central office? Those positions stay here, and we take the salary out. Those positions get reduced out of central and go to the school.
Those positions would be eliminated in central office.
So the staffing would be reduced in central office?
That is correct.
Long term?
Permanently.
Until the budget situation was changed?
Yes, sir.
And we already have an extremely lean central office organization supporting amazing work in our schools. I mean, everybody who's ever done an audit says it's lean, it's lean, it's lean. We don't know how you do what you do with what you've got. So we're going to make it leaner. I say we're cutting bone now.
Any other question? Clarification? Mostly sadness, but Mr. Nieder.
If I could ask for perhaps a bit of direction, and it's going back to the option/recommendation to place some of the centrally based staff that are directly supporting schools, teachers in the classroom, and transition them back to the classroom. Let me perhaps start, before I ask for direction, by answering a question. We've had a lot of hard, thoughtful conversations. Various people, Karen Hamilton, Ms. Moore, Brian Kingsley, Jackie Ellis, myself, Ms. Kimsey, who picked a good week to be at the beach, have all had long conversations to look at how can we do this in a thoughtful manner, mitigate the impact of service reduction to the schools, and not put someone in the school that doesn't belong back in the classroom. And so I will share with you that a thoughtful process has been gone through. We're close to the end of that. We're still working through it. So I share that and then asked for some level of direction, because our year-round schools will be starting soon, and trying to respect any disruption to them as well as our traditional schools. If this is something we're going to go forward with, we need to start that process. So, and I'll look to Ms. Moore for some level of guidance as well. We have already sent out information to principals letting them know we are freezing teaching positions at this point in preparation for this. And the guidance I would ask is the board comfortable with us moving forward with this?
With the reallocation of the 100 positions?
Approximately, yes.
I would say this, that opening a multi-track school with a sub is not what we need to support. So with the combination, I'm not sure what that means to a school that's, for example, just got a resignation letter, needs to fully staff by the time track 1 gets there on July 9, and we've got a hiring freeze. So I'm not sure how that impacts. We have a hiring freeze except for the folks that we're going to relocate from central services, I guess is what we're saying.
It will be a hiring freeze until we can have these people placed, or a sufficient number of them placed.
Okay. Because I am concerned that we would put some schools in a situation where they're opening with a series of subs in a classroom.
Yes, sir.
Our kids don't need that.
We fully agree. We also want to be very thoughtful about the recipient schools and make sure that it's a good placement and a good match as best we can. I think that speaks to some of what you shared, Ms. Hartenstein. I would not suggest that any of this is good or easy.
Well, I'm not happy about having to make this decision, but I think staff has given us this district has a history of supporting our people. And as distasteful as this particular strategy may be, it continues to support our people. So I would be happy to support giving staff direction to go this way. I look forward to what my colleagues have to say.
Did you? Sorry.
Well, I don't like it.
I don't think there's anything any of us could say.
So while I don't necessarily like it, I think it is one of the reasonable strategies that needs to be seriously considered and probably pursued.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've heard here and the mumble and grumbling when we first saw this in work session is I've not heard anybody who feels like, yes, this is where we are. I mean, I think we're barely finding, if any, way to do this with accepting that this is what we should be doing. I think the decision that we'll make in July, unless something miraculously happens between now and then, that we'll be making a decision that none of us are okay to make, and recognizing that over the next couple of days, as all of us will, I always say we'll have a good sleep cycle and we'll have a lot of follow-up from Ms. Deneater when we return in July, but I don't think any of us know where the magic is in this. And so whatever decision we make, it's going to be a difficult decision. And to Ms. Hartenstein's point, I think we're all going to be hard-pressed but committed to finding the way that least impacts our students in those classrooms. But we do know that cutting $29 million, inevitably we will be touching our students. Yeah. And I think that's what we each have to continue to make clear. I feel like we continue to make our case, and we'll pass a budget that we have to pass, and we'll begin the conversation again for the next year, recognizing that we're passing a budget that none of us can applaud, that we're doing what's right by our students and what we know to be true that we need. Mr. Sutton?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of very reasonable requests. I think, as you noted earlier, we are, and we all know, we are a people-intensive organization, and I think at the end of the day, this is a move that supports people. To Mr. Fletcher's point, we talk about this 100 positions, but behind those positions are real people. And, you know, though we're just sort of shifting, if I understand it correctly, we're sort of making a line item or budget shift, so that may be a small change that they won't notice that happens. You know, going from central office to schools, that's a transition, but it still keeps the people and in those positions and the work. And you know, if there's a silver lining, hey, we may find that in a year or two it may be a more effective move because they're in the schools with students and may be able to end up doing their work better. Oh no, just trying to find it.
We're trying to find it. We're trying to find
a silver lining, but you know, at the end of the day, I think it's a very reasonable move, and I support it.
We'll go back around the table because I see several hands. Mr. Fletcher.
Well, I wanted just to maybe provide some context to folks who haven't been following school finance very much. The Wake County has, and the state budget process for the last several years has very purposefully and seductively, if you will, because it's not the public salary conversation, have been transferring expenses to the county budget. So they've been transferring operating expenses from the state to the county on a regular basis. The most recent example, well, a recent example would be in the last 8 years, they've transferred 5% of retirement expenses from the state to the county. Well, if you look at our personnel budget, 5% is like $39 million. That's 3 cents on the local tax rate that the state has transferred to Wake County. And that's just one example. There's more than $120 million that staff has identified that has accrued to the expense of Wake County taxpayers based on those kinds of movements at the state. And that doesn't even include the biggie they did about 20 years ago, which was transfer utility costs from the state to the county, which was today it's about $26 million worth of utility cost. So with consistency, the state is transferring costs that they should bear to county budgets. And that's why you see the increases at Wake County local funding in large part, the way they are. We're having to make up for what the state's not funding, and that's keeping us from doing the academic gains that we want to do in terms of expanding services to students identified as academically and intellectually gifted, and these other programs that we're trying to expand, including the social emotional work that we saw demonstrated at Phillips' graduation. That's the level of service many of our children need in elementary school, not just when they turn 16. And that is the battle, if you will, of the budget writing at the state level, is to transfer operational expenses to the counties. And they're very good at it. And it's difficult to argue with them politically because the salaries are up. The salaries are up. I'm happy the salaries are up. These other things, though, are still a state responsibility, and they're basically robbing the Wake County taxpayers of 5, 6, 7 cents of the local tax rate in order to supplement the state budget.
Agreed. It is. Ms. Manning? So I will say that, Mr. Fletcher, we will transition to a vote on the resolution because Mr. Fletcher, is almost like you delivered a speech on the General Assembly floor, and perhaps we should request that you deliver that speech on the General Assembly floor.
Well, in fact, I'll be sharing those thoughts on WPTF radio tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock.
I didn't even try to plug you that way, but good job.
Is that a plug?
I mean, next time you let me know that I should cue you up like that.
Well, it's interesting. Donna Martinez worked for me at one time, so I've known those folks for a long time. It'll be an interesting conversation.
Well, I hope you say it with as much passion and fervor that you just shared here, because as you can tell, our sentiments are aligned.
We are glad to be your test audience.
You had just the right amount of passion there. Just the right amount. Didn't verge anger. Well, we actually have to vote on the resolution, and I'm not asking that you give complete direction, but I am asking that you follow up so that they are aware. Other than what they've heard here, they'll roll the tape back, and staff are taking notes. But I do recommend board members send their true thoughts that they want to reiterate, and not a board meeting, but please copy the board so that we can see what's being sent to staff as staff begins to prepare for July 10th. Is that okay, Mr.? Because otherwise we won't know what people are sending, but we can't respond to them, but we can share emails.
Right. And so where it is that, I mean, the superintendent obviously does have reassignment authority.
Yes.
Doesn't require board approval in general to reassign staff members, but it wouldn't make any sense to do all that if ultimately the board elects not to include these as part of the budget reductions. Right. And then you've got the rock and the hard place position of timing.
And that's where I don't want to land us.
Yeah, where Mr. Nieder's in and saying, I got to make moves now. So that's the scenario. So yes, it is a time for feedback to staff on this issue to the extent absolutely possible on it. So.
Right, and I guess my point is we've shared that feedback. Yes. However, the rock and the hard place is we still have to have Mr. Dieter prepared to deliver to us on July 10th.
Yes. So if I could perhaps summarize,
yes,
we would like you to take action tonight on adopting an interim budget resolution so we have something in place for July 1st. I believe Superintendent Moore, myself, and other staff have heard your understanding of the option of shifting some of our staff that are currently supporting the schools to being in the schools. As Mr. Blumberg said, that is something we can move forward with. It is an administrative decision, but we wanted to get your sense of where you were thinking with that. It is time sensitive with school opening in a few weeks. And then if you have additional questions, concerns, thoughts about what we've presented tonight or other ideas that you may have for adjustments we could make. If I could ask you, so we get them all through one channel,
yes,
to send them to myself and Terry Kimsey, and we will make sure they get pushed out. Thank you.
Do you need to hear the board say what they like and dislike? I guess that's what I hear you say, Mr. Blumberg, but I'm not sure that board members haven't done that.
No, there's a motion regarding the interim budget.
Yes, that was my first order of business.
Right. There was a motion regarding the interim budget. In response to your question, if any board member, I think you've asked if any board member has any further comments regarding the superintendent's proposed idea of reassignments. I'm sure that Mr. Nieder and the superintendent would welcome that. If everybody said what they're going to say on that tonight, then let's move on with the motion.
Ms. Hartson.
I just need to go on record as saying that I'm not inclined to support
back on record
the reduction, but knowing that my colleagues also are in support of that, I just request that it be done with. It doesn't necessarily have to be 100. Maybe it's only 80. I just worry about the work. That we've worked so hard to get these cooperating folks to truly work with our teachers and our kids. And when you've got one person that can affect an entire school and how they deliver instruction or how they work on the needs of the kids or provide the professional development, you can make a huge difference. And then when you start, because our teachers can't take on the responsibility of and the expectation that having one of those folks in a school is going to change. They're going to be learning a whole lot of things because it's a different role when you go from being a cooperating teacher servicing a lot of folks than when you're actually in a classroom servicing children on an everyday basis. So I have just grave concerns, and please ask for as much diligence as you can possibly come up with to do as little as possible. Thank you.
Everyone else, you please feel so inclined to reiterate your position if you want to ensure Mr. Nieder heard it.
For me, the reassignment of positions, we're looking at worst options. We're trying to pick the least worst option,
yes,
which may or may not exist. And just echoing Ms. Hartenstein's sentiment is when you're a teacher, you tend to get more put on you, and nothing seems to be taken away. And so if we could be very articulate as we're shifting these positions, these roles, the responsibilities of what, I know it's really hard to take things away, but try to think about that as we go. If there's something that we can say, we're gonna, right? We can. So, least worst.
Ms. Cash. Dr. Martin had to run to catch his flight, but again, I think he shared his sentiments as well. Mr. Sun, anything further?
No.
Ms. Kushner.
I support looking at this transfer as a first step, given that we have to focus on our schools and making sure, to Mr. Fletcher's point, that we are not starting our year-round schools with an inordinate number of subs.
That's right. Mr. Agee. Aye. Mr. Blumberg, have I satisfied your need to put us on the record?
I very much appreciate it.
I mean, just the third time, but I think we got it.
It's good to keep council happy.
So again, Mr. Nieder, you've heard the sentiments, and I recognize, and I'm still going to say, because board members had a lot of questions in the hall, that I still am asking board members to follow up even after we take this vote. Because I do think board members have shared their position, but I do also know that there are underlying questions that I want people to have answered. Is there anything further before we take a vote? Reluctantly so. The motion was on the table and second, and thank you for the ability to discuss, ask questions, and we'll continue to do that. So So we are now voting on the budget resolution. All in favor, please note by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hope everybody's going to be back from vacation before the 10th. It's going to be a lot of work. Next, we'll have Board Policy 5010, Parent Organizations. First reading, Mr. Tim Simmons.
Good evening. Perhaps we'll shift to something easy. Policy 5010 is presented as part of the Policy Migration Project. It's reviewed by SLT on May 14th, Policy Committee on 5/29. It'll replace Policy 2540. Some of you may think of it as the sister to 5220, which was the non-parent organizations policy. And we ask your approval.
I'll move approval as recommended.
Second.
It's first reading.
First reading.
I think that was you, Ms. Harnstein, maybe, or Ms. Hammond. Okay. Thank you. We have a motion, and I don't have any notes from Dr. Martin. He usually likes to give his notes, but I don't have any for this one. So,
She's the vice chair.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
all in favor, please note by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Thank you. We're just doing a little protocol up here. Okay. Next, we have Board Policy 5025, Prohibition of Alcoholic Beverages, also first reading. Harold Lassiter.
Good evening. Chair Johnson Hosler, Superintendent Moore, board members. As part of the policy migration, I bring to you tonight for first reading Policy 5025, Prohibition of Alcoholic Beverages. The policy was reviewed at the SLT meeting on April 30th, 2018, and approved at the Policy Committee meeting on May 29th, 2018. When given final board approval, this policy will replace Policy 2560. Staff is requesting board approval.
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt Policy 5025.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please note by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Mr. Lassiter is remaining with us for Board Policy 5026, Use of Tobacco and Nicotine Products. I do have a note here that I get to acknowledge, actually, my dear friend, Sarah Verdreen, who is here from NC Child. And as I said to her, and you also met her colleague, Lamine Perkins, when the students came forward, and Dr. Martin wanted to make sure I share this as well. It is not often that people come before us when a policy is on its way to us, and you get to see the fruits of your labor. And Ms. Verdreen, like me, have spent many, many years advocating. And so I said to the students, tell them this really was magic, that they came to us and that policy was ready to come up. And so I do hope that you can share with them that we took heart to this, and I think they did receive our emails, follow up that Dr. Martin and I both sent. So thank you for being here, and thank you and Ms. Perkins for your support of student advocacy. And without further ado, Mr. Lassiter.
Also, as part of the Policy Migration Project, I bring to you tonight for first reading Policy 5026 and 7250, Use of Tobacco and Nicotine Products. The policy was reviewed at the SLT meeting on April 30th, 2018, and approved at the Policy Committee meeting on May 29th, 2018. When given final board approval, this policy will replace Policy 2308. Staff is requesting board approval.
Madam Chair, I request a board approval for 5026 and 7250.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please note by saying aye. Any opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Lassiter.
My pleasure.
Mr. Sutton, you look ready for closed session or no? I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we go into closed session to consider confidential personal information protected under GS 143-318.11, A1, A3, and A6, and 115C-319 to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privileges provided in GS 143-318.11, A3 regarding Caressa Harrison as guardian ad litem for Isaiah Harrison, a minor, versus Wake County Board of Education, Wake County Superior Court, case number 18, CBS 0005737, to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege as provided in GS 143-318.11A3, and to consult with an attorney employed or retained by the board in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the board, and to consult with and instruct board staff or negotiating agents concerning the position to be taken by or on behalf of the board in negotiation of price and other material terms of a proposed contract for the acquisition of a real property assemblage in Western Wake County area from Seller Research Triangle Foundation of North Carolina, a North Carolina nonprofit corporation. To consult with an attorney employed or retained by the board in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the board, and to consult with and instruct board staff or negotiating agents concerning the position to be taken by or on behalf of the board on the particulars of the acquisition of real property for public infrastructure improvements related to the Willow Spring High School site, and to receive the board's instructions as to the position to be taken on behalf of the board in negotiations in relation thereto, and to consider confidential student information protected under GS 115C-402 and the Family Education and Privacy Rights Act 20 U.S. Code 1232G.
Second. Thank you, Mr. Sutton. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please note by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now go into closed session. Thank you.